Welcome back to the Buck Sexton Show. Does free speech still exist in this country? We like to think that it does, but let's do a quick review, shall we? Recent weeks, we have seen, for example, the economic pressure brought by China to push people in this country to say things that they shouldn't say or to shut down people from saying things that they should say. But you could say, well, that's not the government infringing upon our speech. And I'd say, oh, okay, fine. But it definitely feels like the concept of freedom of speech is under assault from many different quarters. All right, but fair enough. What about pronoun usage? That gets a little closer, doesn't it, to state sanction? Now we're being told that there's always the possibility that we'll go the route that Canada did, where someone's preferred pronouns become an issue of government mandate. So while I may sit here and tell you that, also, why is it, if my pronoun is he, can it also be inferred? They always do this thing. My pronouns are, he, him, his. Well, if I tell you my pronoun is he, can't you just assume that his and him come after that? Or do we get to choose depending on specific usage? Sometimes I'm he, but then I'm also, hers when I want to be possessive about something. I don't know. Just notice that they always do this thing, this virtue signaling now on the left of, my pronouns are, he, him, his, or she, her, hers, or they, z, something or other. I don't know. Haven't yet had the situation play out in court where somebody is being punished for using the wrong pronouns. But that's just a matter of time. And I do believe now, if you use the wrong pronoun in the workplace, so now there is a legal tie in here, you might be liable in a civil sense. Okay, but you might say, well, that's definitely government. If you have to say that a he is a she in the workplace, or else you could be sued, well, then that's definitely government action. So now we are getting into First Amendment under assault territory. But what about just, you can't say something really bad or else you're going to go to prison? Prison, which is the government sanction against individual. I mean, this is where the government literally takes away your freedom by putting you in prison. What about there? Do we have any instances of free speech that is under assault? And I bring you this case of students at the University of Connecticut who were recently arrested for walking past a dormitory and just using the N-word. They didn't call anyone the N-word. Not that, in my view, legally that should be a distinction that we would make. But they didn't call anyone the N-word. They just used the N-word. And, of course, here I am on radio, and not only are there words that I cannot say because they're considered profanity, which is an interesting restriction on speech. I think that really the audience should be the determining factor in whether my language is acceptable or not the government. But government regulations are what they are. And I don't have a right to be on the airwaves across the country, on terrestrial radio at least. If we were just doing this on the web, then I technically could say anything. And then socially and politically, I am not allowed to say the N-word in any capacity ever. I'm pretty sure that even if I were, let's say, a court stenographer and reading aloud the court transcript to everybody in court, I could not say the word without massive repercussions. Governor Cuomo decided that he would not obey that dictate, that cultural dictate, and had some consequences from it. He's a Democrat, so he will not be destroyed by it. He'll just be criticized for it. But you had three people who were walking past a dimly lit parking lot at the University of Connecticut, and they walked past an open window, and they repeatedly said the N-word. And this then was put on an 11-second video that was circulating all over social media earlier this month. And campus police arrested and charged two students on Monday of this week with violating a Connecticut hate crime statute. Jared Corral and Ryan Mukaj, 21 years old, both described by police as white, were charged with ridicule on account of creed, religion, color, denomination, nationality, or race. The misdemeanor charge is punishable by a maximum of 30 days in jail or a fine of up to $50. But 30 days, you can get 30 days in prison now in the state of Connecticut for saying a word that you're not allowed to say. My friends, it is a stupid, ugly, and nasty thing to walk around yelling a racial epithet, or just to use a racial epithet in general. See, I have free speech, or at least I think I do for the time being, so I can say that. But this is as cut and dry as it gets. I mean, this is as clear cut as you will find. You cannot have laws that criminally punish people for using a certain word because the word is offensive or the word makes people feel bad. If we accept this in this country, the First Amendment is over and done with. There is no freedom of speech. How long is it before we're told that illegal alien is a dehumanizing term? We already hear that, but a dehumanizing term to the degree that there must be laws that punish people who would use what is currently the correct in federal statute term for someone in the United States without legal permission to be here. Does anyone think we're far off from this? How often in the last 10 years have conservatives been way off the mark when warning about where some part of the progressive agenda was going? What the next steps of wokeness would be? Look at the transgender debate. We had this 7-year-old down in Texas. Finally, the country's focusing in on this for a moment after yesterday. And what we would have been told 10 years ago was there'll never be a case. No one's going to say that you should transition a 7-year-old with hormone therapy and all this stuff. No one's saying that. It's bigoted for you to even suggest that. Oh, now we're here. It's not bigoted to suggest it because it's happening. Does anyone really think that the power-mad left would stop at just what is really the ugliest of racial epithets in the English language? No, they first established that that's where they draw the line, and then the line will move. Then there will be more terms that are a part of this. In fact, I think it was I can't tell if it was in New Hampshire or Massachusetts. Producer Mark, let me know if you see. I forgot where it was. This just came up yesterday, where they're going to try to outlaw calling someone a very, it is a word for a female dog. That's one way of saying it on the,
I think Massachusetts.
It's Massachusetts,
and
right?
you can say that word on the radio, by the way.
I can?
Yes, I've heard people say it many times.
Are you sure?
100%.
I don't know.
You don't have to say it. I'm just saying you are allowed to say it on the radio. It's not one of the 7 dirty words.
I would feel naughty.
I know you would.
I don't know if I can.
I've heard people do.
We have a clean show here, family friendly. But yeah, word for female dog. Massachusetts is trying to say that, I guess it's misogynistic or something, so you can't call someone that. What about if you're saying it? No. Let's dig into this for a moment. What if you're saying it to be humorous? What if you're saying that word that begins with a B because you're trying to be funny? I've had lots of people say it. They say it in like a funny voice or something, and that it's part of humor. Would it be illegal then, or only if you say it in a mean way? Who's going to adjudicate that? And then that brings me to the more serious term, and the one that I think is understandably more upsetting to people, of the N-word, which I will say this, I disagree. I disagree with the prohibition of being even able to say the word in any context or any reference whatsoever based upon your skin color. Because I am white, I am never allowed to say that word. Ever. Even if I'm, as I said, if I'm reading a court transcript, if I'm just never allowed to say it. I disagree. There is a pernicious effect. There is a nasty and long-lasting legacy of words that some people can say and some people can't. What does that mean for the English language, for our communication, for the future of discourse? So but I can't, like I said, I'll tell you the truth, but I'm not going to be somebody who just charges up the hill to get machine gunned to make a point when everyone else is like, well, that was dumb. So I'm not allowed to say that word. I disagree with that as a principle. Now, that doesn't mean that I think I should be able to say that to a person. I think any racial slur said to a person is grotesque. Racism is wrong. Saying something that's racially hurtful or harmful to somebody is an egregious, dishonorable, ungallant, nasty thing to do. But I don't think that I should be never able to say it. What if I'm in court and somebody says that they called me or they yelled out this word and I'm trying to just, no, I can't say it. I'm never allowed to say it. That's the new rule is you're never allowed to say it, which is absurd. It's an absurd rule, but we all bend the knee. We all say, oh, we don't want to get in trouble. And that brings me back to this case at the University of Connecticut. These two students, and it's very important, obviously, in this Washington Post piece that it's noted the police say the two students who were arrested are white. Does anyone think that there's no one on the campus of the University of Connecticut who ever says the N-word? I have friends and I've had colleagues who are African American who will freely use the term. So now under Connecticut's hate crime statute, are we going to have, this is where this is heading, my friends, are we going to have a circumstance where African Americans are legally entitled to say a word, but a white person who under any context says the word could be put in prison for 30 days? That is, as I understand it, the way the law would play out right now in 2019 here in America. See, liberals have no real respect for the First Amendment. If the First Amendment does not protect hateful, disgusting, vile, racist speech, the First Amendment doesn't protect anything. We don't need a First Amendment to protect how's the weather. We don't need a First Amendment to protect us from saying, you look great, did you lose some weight? Although actually, if you say that to somebody these days, you probably get in trouble. That's like a microaggression. It's bad. But the frenzy around this case, where you've had people who have been arrested for saying a word, this is absolutely. If you want to talk about fascism, something that seems fascistic to me is putting people in a cell because they say a word you don't like. Not allowed, folks. Not if you're going to believe in that free speech is a thing, that there is a First Amendment, and that it has any real meaning. This is from the Washington Post on this case. The arrests come amid outcry from students demanding that administrators address racism and promote inclusion on the university's main campus in Connecticut. Shortly after the parking lot video went viral, another student alleged that two fraternity members used a racial slur against her at a party. This is according to the university's NAACP chapter. Well, let's see. Did that actually happen? Can anyone prove that happened? There are plenty of race hoaxes on campus. Oh, I know. We're supposed to forget it, but it happens all the time. On Monday afternoon, hundreds of students chanted, "It's more than just a word," during an on-campus march and rally, joining professors in calling for action. It's not more than just a word. It's a word. A lot of words have a lot of meanings, a lot of implications, a lot of stuff. It's a word. If you can't say a word without being arrested, we have a problem. We don't have a First Amendment anymore. And students in this current era of safe spaces, and I don't want to hear anything that I don't like, that's nasty. Here's a perfect example of this. Quote, "I feel uncomfortable and scared on this campus at this point," said a UConn student. "We want change. This is not fair to us. It's disrespectful." These two students that said this word, not to anybody, but just said it to each other and was caught on video. These two students are almost certain to be expelled, which I will say, that's the university can say, hey, you act like a jerk, we're kicking you out of it. You don't have a right to be at the university. I'm fine with that, but you also get into the, well, where do they draw the lines on free speech, which is the campus speech debate. I actually did my college thesis on this, but the campus speech debate is another. But at least that's well, it's University of Connecticut, which I think, oh no, it's not a state school. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But is it a state school? Is it a private institution? There's a little bit of a difference there. But arresting people? Students are saying that they're scared and they think that racism is flourishing on campus when in reality, two idiots said something dumb on video to each other and were arrested for it. I think that's the opposite of flourishing and people are okay with it and everything else, The hypersensitivity and the desire to use the state to protect people's feelings. This is an existential threat to the First Amendment of free speech. Liberals used to understand this. They've abandoned this now. Wokeness has completely eradicated for many of the major institutions of the left any sense of free speech that could be considered controversial, that could be considered dangerous, or whatever it may be. Racist, sexist. Does the First Amendment really count anymore? Does the free speech clause in the First Amendment mean anything to the left of this country? I would say no, not really. They don't. They believe in free speech until they really, really don't like the speech, and then they don't believe in free speech anymore. And they will send men with guns and handcuffs to take you and lock you up until you agree to not say the words that they don't want you to say. It's not free speech. It's a problem. Hope you're all enjoying the Pluto TV show here on Channel 248. To those of you who are listening to the podcast, you can always just download the Pluto TV app and tune in. You get a little peek as to what really goes on in the Freedom Hut day in and day out. We'd love for you to join. And also, we hope that you'll continue to share the podcast with friends. You can listen to it on iTunes, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's going up every day by 3 Eastern, so we want this to be your and all of your friends, all the people you know who care about politics and conservative, moderate, even some liberals listen to this show. More liberals should listen to the show. They'd understand what conservatives really think. You can listen every day at 3 Eastern, so please do join us for that and check that out. By the way, producer Mark threw something kind of random in the mix when I was talking about the Joker movie, that the steps where the Joker does this weird dance. And I'm assuming, by the way, that for Halloween, everyone's dressing up as the Joaquin Phoenix version of the Joker now. Because I remember years ago that was a very popular costume when The Dark Knight Rises came out. It turns out that the stairway from the Joker movie is so scary that even Ocasio-Cortez has come out to say, quote, "When I was growing up, everybody would tell us was stay away from those steps or go with a friend." The steps run along 167th Street and 1165 Shakespeare Avenue on Instagram. So, producer Mark, you were correct. These stairs are allegedly a scary place to hang out, which hopefully maybe this will revitalize this block a little bit.
I'm always correct, Buck.
Make it a tourist. See, I say that, though. And since we don't always agree, that means that one of us has got to be wrong.
Or we can just always be right.
I like where producer Mark's head's at on this one. Let's just both always be right. That's a better way to go. All right. Syria, what's happening there?
Team Buck is cleared.
Roger that.
And ready for the Buck Brief.
So we have a small group there, and we've secured the oil. Other than that, there's no reason for it, in our opinion. And again, the Kurds are going to be watching. We're working with the Kurds. We have a good relationship with the Kurds. But we never agreed to, protect the Kurds. We fought with them for 3.5 to 4 years. We never agreed to protect the Kurds for the rest of their lives. Remember this. When Iraq was fighting the Kurds, everybody thought we were going to fight with the Kurds. I said, well, it's a little strange that we're fighting with the Kurds when we just spent $4 trillion on Iraq, and now we're going to be fighting Iraq. So what I did is I said, we're not going to take a position. Let them fight themselves.
Based on the intelligence we have, the reporting we have, of the 11,000 or so detainees that were imprisoned in northeast Syria, we've only had reports of a little bit more than 100 that have escaped. The SDF, and we remain in contact with them, are maintaining the guards over top the prisons they have control of. So right now we have not seen this big prison break that we all expect.
Wait a second. I thought that we were all told by the experts that if Trump was able to do what he just did, if that decision to remove U.S. troops from Syria was allowed to stand, then we would see mass chaos in this portion of Syria where 11,000 detained ISIS fighters would all just be let loose. Turns out so far the number is 100, and I can tell you from my time dealing with and working on the Iraq issue back in the day for the U.S. government, there have been many, many prison breaks of far more than 100 people involving al-Qaeda in Iraq fighters and ISIS fighters. This is not a huge number. This is not all things considered, a big deal. Yes, you could say it depends on who the 100 fighters are, but 100 fighters is not a lot in the grand scheme of things. We were told there's going to be a genocide of Turks. There have been some casualties, to be sure, and that's terribly unfortunate, but there have been 500,000 people killed in Syria, most of them while Obama was president and doing nothing about Syria. So now the 200 casualties between the fighting going on with the Kurds and the Turks it's certainly regrettable. Is it evidence that Trump has made the wrong decision here? Does it prove that Trump has made the wrong decision here? I think the answer is a lot more complicated than a lot of the experts would have led you to believe in the last few days. The terrible things that we were told would happen right away as soon as the troops were moved have not happened. I think it's fair to say, okay, well, that's a point worthy of some focus. The parade of horribles that we were told would immediately occur, or soon thereafter, once Trump had moved some of these troops out of Syria, that has not yet occurred. I keep seeing all these news reports about how betrayed the Kurds feel, and I can understand that the suddenness of this would make it feel like a jolt to the Kurds who have been fighting alongside us. But keep in mind, Kurds fighting against ISIS was in their interest too. And we did not just leave the Kurds high and dry. We have the United States government, the Trump administration, Secretary of State Pompeo, they have gone and they have formed a deal with the Turks to stop attacking the Kurds. And we have to remember that this is all with the backdrop of a 30-plus year insurgency fight between the PKK, a Kurdish separatist terrorist group, they are designated as terrorists, and the Turkish government. So there's bad blood and problems stretching back here for decades, have nothing to do with Trump. So was the plan going to be that we would have U.S. troops there forever? Was the plan going to be that we would always be the ones who would tell the Kurdish people of Syria, who had fought with us against the Islamic State, that if anyone ever messes with you, we're going to fight them? We're going to bomb? How far are the people that are so worried about this willing to go? Would they have bombed Turkish military units in order to stop them from attacking the Kurds? Would we shoot Turkish planes out of the sky with our own planes? Or with surface-to-air missiles? Would we do that to protect the Kurds? No. What we've seen is the Trump administration taking diplomatic action to try to protect our allies, but also to remove the United States from the middle of this mess. And today we have some news to that end. This is from Fox News. President Trump announced on Wednesday that conditions have been met between Turkey and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces for what he called a permanent ceasefire between the two sides, and that the United States is lifting sanctions on Ankara that were implemented following the invasion of northern Syria. Speaking at the White House, Trump said that while a permanent ceasefire will be tough to maintain in the volatile region, he hopes that it will last and end the conflict between Turkey and the Kurds. I do believe it will be permanent, he said. This was an outcome created by us, the United States, and nobody else. We've done something very, very special. So what you have here is the creation of a safe zone along the Turkish-Syria border, and you have a filling of the vacuum where Turkey and Russia are agreeing to boundaries within Syria that are acceptable to them. And people are saying, oh, but look at this, there's a Russian influence increasing as a result of this. I mean, I would just like to point out that Putin became the kingmaker in Syria, so to speak, under the Obama administration. Russia got heavily involved in fighting the civil war on behalf of the Assad regime. But the journalists want to keep rewriting history. They want to keep pretending that, oh, now all of a sudden Russia has become a very potent, very important player in the region. But that was not the case before. That's just a lie. That's just not true. But is it useful for bashing Trump? Yes, it is. The answer is it's useful for bashing Trump. And because it is useful to that end, nothing else matters. Nothing else is important here. The history, the context, everything else, it's all just left by the wayside. And that's why I've just been fighting against what I feel is a clear campaign of hysteria about Trump's move. Look, there's legitimate criticism of it. It was more abrupt than it probably should have been. It did not consult with necessary partners in the region. But maybe Trump's goal here was to not allow these different players to pressure him to do something he didn't want to do as commander-in-chief. And he says, look, we're just coming out. We're just not going to be in the middle of this. We're not going to be the buffer. We're not going to have U.S. troops as the buffer between all these warring factions in a country where there is simply no imminent core U.S. national security interest at stake. And we have the troops being moved now to western Iraq. People are saying, oh, well, he's not ending wars. He's just moving the troops to another place. Well, adding to the area of operations of active conflict is expanding on a war, and Trump is trying to, you could say, at least contract the war. If he can't end the war, he should make it smaller. Less territory that we are trying to defend, less territory where U.S. troops are being put in imminent harm. But that's not how, of course, this is not how the left sees any of this. They see it as an opportunity to bash Trump, to say that he's made this horrible mistake and that the Russians are benefiting from this in ways that just show how terrible this Trump decision is. I think the president's right. We do not want a presence in Syria. If you go back and look at what happened when Ronald Reagan, that's right, it was Reagan, when he was president, we had a U.S. contingent as part of this multinational force in Beirut, trying to help just calm things down, stabilize things there. And then eventually we had Hezbollah suicide bombers driving into the Marine barracks. We lost almost 300 of our own in one day. And eventually we realized this isn't our fight. We're just going to go. And things in Lebanon calmed down. Now, Lebanon hasn't been exactly a model of stability since then, but at least it wasn't our soldiers, our people, trying to hold the whole place together, trying to keep the combatants from being at each other's throats. These are the distinctions that President Trump promised he would make. These are the promises that he put out there during the campaign. So why is he getting so... This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that he's doing this, that he's making these decisions. It really is only a surprise to the foreign policy consensus set, who never admit any mistakes. I mean, you ask them, was Iraq a mistake? The people that pushed it would say, oh, no, it was a great idea. Afghanistan a mistake? No, things are going swimmingly there. Things are fantastic in Afghanistan. Was Libya a mistake? Oh, no, Jeffersonian democracy. I mean, I know I'm being a little glib about it, but they never admit that the overarching strategy has been wrong here. Can Trump maybe take credit? We'll have to see how long this holds, but if we do have what is promised right now, which is a ceasefire between the Turks and the Kurds in northern Syria, and the Russians deconflicting with the Turks and the Russians, of course, working with the Assad regime to take control of these areas inside Syria, isn't that the outcome we want? Isn't that a better outcome? The Kurds being closer to the Russians when the Russians are much more involved in Syria than we are willing to be, unless we're going to just invade. Isn't that a good idea? Isn't our only real interest there the suppression of the Islamic State? And all of these different entities that we're talking about have an interest. Well, the Turks, maybe not as much, but the Kurds, the Russians, the Assad regime, they all want to suppress the Islamic State. Why not leave that to them? And if they're not getting the job done, well, then we handle what we have to handle. What is the alternative? I always ask this. What are we supposed to do? What was Trump long-term being asked to do here on behalf of the Kurds? Not clear. No one seems to have the answer for that. Only Trump is terrible. Trump makes horrible foreign policy decisions. And this is why I get so frustrated with it, because people see everything through a lens of whether, especially in this realm of national security and trying to make good decisions that affect very much the lives, not just of people in foreign countries, but the lives of our own people who have to go and clean up the mess in some foreign country. Trump's taking a different approach. He may be right here. I think he is. And won't it be interesting to look back on this and see what was being said about this decision versus what actually happened.
The reason I start with aloha everywhere I go is because, to me, the key to overcoming the divides in our country and in Washington lie in this word. It does not mean hello. It does not mean goodbye. The real meaning of the word aloha is I come to you with respect. That it is a recognition that we are all brothers and sisters. That we are all children of God. No matter where we come from, no matter who we love, where we live, how we worship, if we worship, how much or how little money we have, none of these things matter when we are just rooted in our foundation of seeing each other for who we really are.
And that, my friends, is why the left hates Tulsi Gabbard right there. That's why someone who is a progressive, a leftist, a very anti-Trump, is constantly being thrown under the bus by her own side. Hillary Clinton, how many Democrats did you hear? We've been talking about this. How many Democrats did you hear who said it is absolutely... Bernie Sanders did come out, give the guy some credit.
He's like, it's crazy what they said about him. If anyone's a Russian asset, it's me, but a Soviet asset, not a Russian asset. So I went to the Soviet Union for my honeymoon. It was amazing.
I still think that doesn't get enough focus, that Bernie Sanders chose to go to the Soviet Union on his honeymoon. An American who's like, yeah, I got an idea, honey. Let's celebrate our nuptials by being in a place where bread lines and toilet paper shortages are the norm, and there's no freedom, and people are essentially all indentured servants of the state. Yeah.
Let's go check it out. It's going to be amazing. I hear Vladivostok is lovely this time of year.
So Bernie did step up, though, for Tulsi, which was an interesting moment. But I think really because that was a way to take a slap at Hillary Clinton's comments. I think that's what really was motivating Bernie there, not some inherent bravery. But Tulsi's message here of, can we just be respectful to each other? And she has been respectful to conservatives that have wanted to talk to her. In fact, I'd love to get her on this show at some point. I found out yesterday, producer Mark told me, I didn't even realize. Andrew Yang and I follow each other on Twitter. Who even knew? I forgot about that. So I could probably get Yang to come in here and hang out and talk about some things. We'd have a very interesting conversation. I like people who are respectful and have ideas, regardless of where they fall on the political spectrum. I like people who are respectful and have ideas. Democrats, however, cannot abide this stuff right now because the whole Democrat narrative, we're going to get into why this is. One, it's because Trump has broken them, and psychologically they're damaged because they've had to question so much about what they thought was true in the world because of the Trump presidency. But also the primary pitch in 2020 is going to be, if you vote for Trump, you're a bad person. And so anyone within the Democratic faithful who undermines that message is a problem, right? Anyone who is saying, well, hold on a second. I mean, there are good people who vote for Trump. There are good people who are Republicans. Oh, no, Democrats can't allow that. They would much prefer to give platforms to people who will say anything to be on TV as long as they're damaging Trump. The mooch, what a perfect description. Here he is on national TV. This is a guy who I remember being on Fox a couple times, and he would defend anything Trump said. Anything Trump did was, this is a non-traditional president. He's amazing. He's a game changer. He's fantastic. Oh, but then the mooch gets fired from his White House job, and then this happens. Play clip one.
I predicted on this show that there would be a full-blown meltdown. We're 3 months into the meltdown, and so I'll make another prediction. They're going to start turning on each other. They've already have the White House staff because the president doesn't have anybody's back. He's the most disloyal person that you can come across in civilization, and so they're going to start turning on each other now, and then they're going to turn on him, and they're going to admit to the rank illegality, the rank amorality of the president, okay? And when that happens, this thing's going to be over, and you're going to need a possible solution. So when you're an entrepreneur, you look at the future, and you're like, okay, let's curve the future towards a reality that we see as entrepreneurs. And so that's what I think will happen.
Anything to get on TV, anything to damage Trump. No aloha spirit from the mooch. No, I come with respect, as Tulsi said. Hate the other side. Undermine the other side. Just say the nastiest things possible. That's going to be the Democrat 2020 strategy. And so no one's allowed to get in the way of that.